We'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Kolpak. Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston. Here. Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. We lost a member of the community this weekend, John Q. Paulson. John Q. Paulson was part of the Fargo Clinic, but more importantly, he was part of our planning committee. And as I asked the team, I don't know how many years he served as chair of that committee, but a lot of the things that John did influenced how the city has grown to this day. So I'd just like to take a moment of silence in honor of John Q. Paulson. Thank you. Finance. The Government Financial Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Fargo for its annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2022. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. This is the 25th consecutive year the finance department has gotten this award. That's outstanding that a team can do that well. Thank you. Library. Area gardeners and plant enthusiasts are invited to take part in the edible landscaping in the Northern Plains presentation Monday at 6:30 at the Carlson Library. Participants will learn how to grow more food with less effort using cold hardy perennial crops that double as beautiful landscaping plants. The 8th annual Northern Narratives 2024 Writing Project is accepting submissions of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction writing through March 31st. Other. The City of Fargo and Fargo Public Health are hosting community conversation on ending homelessness together on Wednesday, and the public is invited to attend the events, which will focus on community-wide discussion of realistic approaches to addressing homelessness. James Matthew, Milwaukee County Housing, will be the keynote speaker. He played an instrumental role in leading Milwaukee to 45% reduction in homelessness since 2015. This is the first event that will be held from 1 to 3 here in the city chambers tomorrow. We invite you to attend in person or via live stream, tvfargo.com. Then tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Fargo Theater, James will present realistic approaches to addressing homelessness in the metro area. This will include a screening of a short documentary and an interactive conversation of the subject matter experts. Both events are made possible through the North Dakota Health Equity Grant. On February 11th, a ceremony was held in honor of the life of fallen police officer Jason Mosier on the anniversary of his passing. He served 6 years with the Fargo PD and made an impact on the lives in the department and the members of the community. We will continue to honor his heroic legacy and never forget his sacrifice. We have made a short video recapping this event. And in light of the Burnsville episode, we are sending Honor Guard down to Burnsville to honor the fallen officers that are down there and firefighter. Short video. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2024 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 1 through 36?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Preston.
Aye.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Colpack.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We have a lot of speakers tonight, so I'm going to ask you to keep to the 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes is what you'll get to speak. You will hear a beep, and there are 15 seconds left. If the 15 seconds are gone, the mic will be turned off. And just as it's an attempt to let everybody speak who signed up tonight, and we're at a full slot of people that we wish to speak. So again, 2.5 minutes, you'll hear a beep, and then you're expected to finish up in 15 seconds. Virtually, do we have Wes Philomay first? No?
Wes Philomay, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying long live George Floyd and Anue Batchick. I apologize for not being able to physically be there with you all as I am currently traveling out of state for work. But as a leader, I have a firm belief that when you provide negative feedback to someone for something you believe they've done wrong, you must provide equal energy and praise when they have done something right. On February 5th, as I sat at the Starbucks inside of Target on 13th Avenue, a female guest began to escalate after finding out her partner had been arrested earlier that morning. Asset Protection attempted to calm her down to no avail until eventually Fargo PD was called. Officer Lean, Officer Seehusen, and Officer Ware arrived on scene and began to engage the young woman. Officer Ware took lead and was able to keep her calm while gathering information. She then had one of the other two officers reach out to the jail and confirm the young woman's partner had been arrested and what his bond was. She offered to give the young lady a ride to the jail to pay the bond and assured her that he would be released once processed. The young woman had a physical disability that made difficult for her to walk. Officer Ware wrapped her arm around the young lady's arm and assisted her to the bathroom to grab her coat before helping her out of the store. The calm, caring, and empathetic way in which the officers handled the young woman to obtain a peaceful resolution was exemplary. On their way out, I shook one of the officers' hands and said thank you. To Officer Lean, Officer Seehusen, and Officer Ware, thank you for being a shining example of what good policing looks like in our community. There is no question that we have great members of law enforcement all across the country who honor the badge. Some of them are even in my family. In Burnsville, Minnesota, 2 officers and 1 first responder were killed with another officer wounded this past weekend. I extend my condolences to all of their families and the Burnsville community. I've said from day one that I am not against police. I am only against bad policing. And as much as we must honor those who honor the badge, we must hold accountable the ones who disgrace it. Thank you.
Kyle Fieldhick.
I want to start tonight with the all too relevant words of Martin Luther King Jr. From jail, he wrote, "The African American's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the Ku Klux Klan, but the white moderate. The white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Who constantly says, I agree with you in your goals you seek, but I cannot agree with you in your methods." King added, "Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." Today, the easy choice we all face is to do nothing, to remain silent and to sit back and think, these are the crimes of Israeli soldiers and politicians, not us. But as Dr. King understood, in the face of extreme violence and oppression, it is more crucial to look not at the direct perpetrators, but at those who indirectly facilitate and stand complacent with the brutality. As the death toll only climbs and the starving children get thinner by the day, it is foolish to believe these aren't our crimes. Israel's hostility rests on the foundation of billions in unconditional U.S. military aid and diplomatic support. Fargo residents will likely be taxed up to $7 million to directly subsidize the war and horror in Gaza. For comparison, that is over a quarter of the Fargo's police budget, similar to the $9.8 million the city spends on roads and well over the $2.6 million spent on planning and development. But there is a more fundamental problem here of courage and integrity. The Commission knows the importance of leadership to denounce far-off legislation that negatively impacts us here. Last year, the city of Fargo, quote, urged opposition, end quote, to 2 state legislature bills against book bans. I have 2 questions, and I will be following up for an answer. For what non-superficial reason is Fargo willing to comment on state but not national policy? And more importantly, why are you willing to speak out to protect children's books, but not the 100 Palestinian children murdered every day, many of whom are brothers, sisters, cousins, nieces, and nephews to our community members here, and whose annihilation is being subsidized by millions of Fargo's tax dollars? You are Fargo's voice. I hope to encourage you to use your privilege for the betterment of this community, our country, and the world. Thank you.
Amr Carney.
Mayor and the commissioners. I remember a cold November night or afternoon, 1999. Dr. Tim Mahoney came to me, introduced himself, looked in my eyes, and said, I'm here to help, whatever you need. Those kind words from Dr. Mahoney made my subsequent 25 years comfortable and welcomed in Fargo. Now, 25 years later, I ask Mayor Mahoney that call for a ceasefire in Gaza and Palestine and Israel. Why call for a ceasefire? We all know calling for ceasefire at this podium will not make a difference. We all know that. But at least our conscience will be clear. Dr. Mayor Tim Mahoney can go to bed that the allegiance he took to save lives as a surgeon, as a trauma surgeon, which I saw myself, at least he will have the voice in saving thousands of people just with one stroke of his pen. At least help. So why call for ceasefire? And let me be cynical. I apologize for being cynical. Lately, we see lots of videos on television regarding animal rescue. A horse or a dog falls in the icy lake. A common passerby, first responder, will risk its life to go in the icy lake to save a dog or a horse or an animal. Why can't we have the same standard that we have for animals in the US for the Palestinians in Gaza? Why I say animals? Because an Israeli minister said they are animals. So let's keep animal standards for the Palestinians. I challenge everyone here, if they have a pet or a farm animal in their house, will they take that animal to a hospital in Gaza, which has no electricity, no lights, bombing, and no anesthesia? Will you have your pet animal have surgery without anesthesia, Dr. Mahoney? No, you won't. So why have those standards that we have for animals, we say yes for Palestinians? Simple answer, we don't. There's no standard. I still have 10 seconds. I encourage everyone to see my favorite comedy movie, Trading Places, Eddie Murphy classic from 1980s. Let's put Palestinians in Israel and Israelis in Palestine just for a few minutes. You'll know how it feels. Thank you.
Prairie Johnson.
Commissioners, I'm here to urge you to pass the ceasefire resolution in Fargo as our Human Rights Commission unanimously has. This genocide is not far removed, as you have heard from different perspectives in our community. It is affecting our emotions, our psyche, our daily responsibilities. It is mass grief. We are honored by those who have shared firsthand experience vulnerably and not without cost. While myself and other community members were peacefully marching with this now muddy banner stating hospitals should be a safe zone, an adult man came out of his workplace to assault us. He came out screaming, ripped this banner out of people's hands, and started shoving folks. I and a couple others were punched in our faces, including a Palestinian American from Gaza who was repeatedly punched. A second man made lewd gestures directed at a young woman. The assailants quickly fled in their cars, Soon after, neighborhood people and passersby joined the peace march, staying out longer than what was planned. That man chose to assault his neighbors, who were outside calling for an end to violence and crime. He allowed for no conversation, only immediate violence. There are numerous cities that have used their power and privilege to advocate for peace. 379 schools, 522 mosques, 2 churches, 246 hospitals have been destroyed. 33,590 civilians, including 14,031 children, have been killed. Israel's leaders have expressed over and over, as you have heard, they will continue the carnage and ethnic cleansing. Finally, the Biden administration has floated the word ceasefire, though still using our tax dollars to fund this. This is why we need our local leaders to speak out. We all want to cultivate community that celebrates each other and where we all feel safe. What is going on in Gaza and the West Bank is unacceptable. We cannot turn our eyes from violence if we want to prevent it. The violence we experienced and the violence being inflicted against Gazans are interlinked. You have to look at the root cause. I ask my compassionate city to stand against the hatred and against the disregard for human life, to stand with empathy in peace. Pass the ceasefire resolution. Thank you. Free Palestine.
No other comments, please, or we'll stop public hearing. Hababi Elbasiano.
I used to look back and wonder how we let the Holocaust happen. I now realize as I watch history repeat itself that a community is bound by its borders. Their empathy begins and ends with a line, never crossed, never breached. And now we watch as Israel bombs borders and bulldozes boundaries, tugging at the strings of its puppets all over the world to convince you that what they are doing is in the name of self-defense, that their guns aren't meant to kill and their bombs aren't meant to destroy, that innocent civilians are found dead, not murdered. But twisting reality does not make it any less real. Not when we are forced to witness a genocide from behind a screen with our hands tied behind our backs and our voices silenced. The border, and while it may be easy for you to scroll past the genocide, you will never be able to forget. The border you once thought kept the evil out in the world actually concealed it within your people. The silence you practice now will be a sign of your support for murder, torture, and theft. The community you fought long and hard to protect will remind you every day that you gave them ammunition to break laws and spread hate when you turned a blind eye to the atrocities Israel is committing. In 1932, the International Peace Garden was founded in North Dakota for people across borders to share friendships and extend an arm of peace. The same arm Palestinians offered Jews during the Holocaust when they sought refuge in their homes. And the same arm that Israel severed when they decided to repay that favor by stealing their homes and murdering their people. But peace for one means peace for all. I am not speaking to you as an Arab or a Muslim or a woman or a daughter or a friend or a sister. I am standing here before you as a human, asking you to call for a ceasefire, to support that same peace you promised within that garden, because you will always harvest what you plant.
Allison Slavic.
Hello again. Today I am speaking on behalf of 2 community members from Palestine who are unable to address you themselves. First is Dr. Baha al-Abid. The war in Gaza strikes a personal tone for him. He was born merely miles away from the Jordan River. His parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents were born in the West Bank. Today, many of his immediate and extended family, along with his friends, still live in the Holy Land, and he's unsure if they'll survive through this genocide. 7 years ago, Dr. al-Abid chose to live, serve, and pay taxes in North Dakota as a doctor in the intensive care unit. He says, I don't know about you, but I would like my tax money to stay in North Dakota and serve North Dakota communities. Why would billions of our tax dollars be sent thousands of miles away to fund the senseless killing of children? Why would we be okay with taking away money that North Dakotans worked hard for and use it to fund immoral wars? He then continued with, there's absolutely no justification of bombing hospitals or children, none whatsoever. I couldn't agree more. The other resident that I'm speaking for tonight is another local physician who does not wish to be named, but wants her voice to be heard. She states, as residents of Fargo, our hearts are heavy with the knowledge that such suffering continues unabated. Gazans are losing their lives daily in a conflict marked by senseless violence, poor humanitarian conditions, and actions that bear the weight of genocide. She goes on to say, this matter, while international, hits close to home for us in Fargo. It questions the alignment of our community's resources with our values of compassion, justice, and global responsibility. She believes addressing the plight of Gazans' children and advocating for peace is a reflection of Fargo's ethical stance and a direct expression of our shared humanity. It's a call to action that resonates with our community's commitment to making a positive impact in the world. These two community members, along with all of these community members, urge you to align Fargo's actions with Fargo's values and call for a ceasefire now.
Fazia Addy.
Good evening. I want to thank you for having us today here and having us in the schedule. I also want to thank the Voices of Palestine. I want to tell you something about me. I'm a resident of North Dakota for the last 28 years. I have all my children here in merit care. I have worked around this area. I worked across every culture, every religion, and everything. Today, I came to support this issue because of the human suffering that we have seen in all the media every day. I also want to tell you the Muslim community is very invested in our community. They are working in the production lines, they are working in the hospitals, they are working in the elder care, housekeeping, you name it. We are very invested in this community, and I also ask for your support to have a ceasefire because of the children. We are here as mothers. I am an African woman. I never went to that area in my life. I don't know what the situation on the ground is. To be honest, I'm very innocent about it, but I'm here as a citizen to ask for, to support our community who are here, who are living here, to hear their voice, because we really need this. I know we are small town, we don't make the whole national voice, but this will also encourage our community to be good citizens of Fargo, North Dakota. Thank you for having me.
Sharon Altendorf.
Good afternoon. I'm Sister Sharon Altendorf, a presentation sister, and I'm reading this for David Myers, Reformed Jew and president of the FM Interfaith Center. We must never forget Hamas's vicious terrorist attack on Israel October 7th, the kidnapping of 250 Israelis and foreigners, and the murder of around 1,200 people. Israel has a right to self-defense and a right to try to inflict significant damage on Hamas's military capability. I believe, however, that even while recognizing that Hamas hides among civilians, there should be limits to what Israeli military forces are permitted to do in an environment crowded with citizens. It is my judgment that these limits have not been observed. I also now believe that Israel's original objective of completely destroying Hamas is, in words of the New York Times Jewish columnist Thomas Friedman, in quotes, an unattainable goal. The high number of casualties among Palestinian civilians, including infants and children, has in fact increased support for Hamas among Palestinians. Polls taken before and after October 7th show this. A humanitarian catastrophe exists in Gaza. There is no safe place for Palestinians to flee Israeli military attacks. Hostilities need to end so that the thousands who are wounded can be moved to hospitals outside of Gaza, and so that water, food, and medical supplies can be moved into Gaza to prevent widespread starvation, dehydration, disease, and death from lack of medical care. Finally, I am here to provide a Jewish voice on behalf of those Israeli families of hostages who believe that a permanent ceasefire is the best way to bring the remaining hostages home.
Sumaya Abukar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council members, and fellow advocates for justice. Today I stand before you with a heavy heart, compelled to address an urgent and deeply distressing issue that demands our collective attention and action: the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Not conflicts, not war, but genocide. As a first-generation college student who for the longest time viewed the United States as a nation, a voice, it baffles me that many still choose to stay silent in times of oppression. The genocide in Gaza is a humanitarian crisis that has persisted for far too long, causing immeasurable suffering to innocent lives. First and foremost, it is crucial to acknowledge the gravity of the term genocide. According to Britannica, genocide is defined as the deliberate and systematic destruction of a racial, ethnic, religious, or national group, and is a crime against humanity that strikes at the very core of our shared values. In Gaza, countless lives are enduring the consequences of a conflict that has escalated to a level where lives are lost daily, and entire communities are on the brink of collapse. Furthermore, the ripple effects of the crisis in Gaza extend beyond its borders, contributing to regional instability and undermining efforts towards peace. We must recognize that addressing the root causes of the conflict and acting towards a just and lasting solution is not an obligation, but in the best interest of global peace for all. Every person, regardless of their background, deserves to live in dignity, free from fear and violence. So by turning a blind eye to the genocide in Gaza, we risk betraying these fundamental principles that bind us as a global community. All in all, let us not be silent witnesses to the suffering in Gaza. We must stand united in our commitment to ending the genocide, advocating for justice, and fostering a world where rights and dignity of every individual are respected and protected. Council members, I urge you all to call for an immediate ceasefire.
Pastor Martin Avery.
Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners, members of the community, my name is Pastor Martin Avery. I'm an ordained United Methodist elder, currently serving a two-charge ELCA parish. I live here in Fargo. I've been asked to speak on behalf of the local faith community in support of a resolution calling for a ceasefire in regards to the ongoing death and destruction in Israel and Gaza. We believe that it's possible to be outraged by more than one thing at a time, and that wishing for an end to the current violence in Gaza does not condone the violence Hamas has had against Israel. We deplore both the killing of 1,139 people and taking of 240 perpetrated against Israel by Hamas on October 7th, and Israel's response that continues with no end in sight. According to Lutheran World Federation, as of the 19th, 29,000 children, women, and men have died. 69,000 have been wounded. Nearly 2 million people, 85% of the population of Gaza, have been displaced, and around 45% of homes in Gaza have been destroyed. Over 150 Israeli hostages are still held in Gaza. The current violence brings to mind an African proverb I first heard from a professor of mine back in the 80s, and they said it in the context of another conflict with civilians bearing the brunt of violence by forces they found themselves between. And this is that when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And sadly, the metaphor doesn't address the violence against people who may live on the other side of the planet. Reverend Elizabeth A. Eaton, the presiding bishop of the ELCA Church, has written in an open letter, in our communities we have Jewish and Muslim neighbors who are also facing the horrors of this crisis and its impact on their loved ones, people residing here in the States. While we seek a passage of the resolution in favor of a ceasefire, I'd like to share with you a portion of a prayer published back in October from Rose Marie Berger in Sojourners. We lift up Palestine and Israel, its people, its land, its creatures. War is a monster and it consumes everything in its path. Peace is a gift shared at meals of memory with Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Let us burn incense, not children. Let us break bread, not bodies. Let us plant olive groves, not cemeteries. We beg for love, compassion, prevail on all our We ask for passage.
Thank you. I want to state that we've heard your comments about the tragic situation in the Middle East. This armed conflict is impacting all parties in the Middle East and around the globe. We continue to advocate for a negotiated settlement which will finally bring peace to this area of the world. And to that end, I am collaborating with our Metro government partners on potential steps forward. Thank you for sharing your comments with you. We have heard you. We'll take a 5-minute recess and restart the business meeting after that. I'm going to give you a 1-minute warning, please. I know you want to visit. You can visit in the lobby. That's fine. We have a business meeting to complete here. Call the meeting back to order. Item 38, public hearing, application by Packet Digital property tax exemption for a project located at 1300 and 1358 39th Street North, which the applicant will use primarily for design, development, and manufacture battery cells. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. As you noted, this is site is an existing building. Packet Digital has been before us several times. The company continues to expand. This particular expansion will involve the manufacture of batteries. They're applying for a 5-year property tax exemption on this existing building located, as you can see, northwest of I-29 and 12th Avenue North. I'm going to have Ryan Oshheim from the EDC talk briefly about this company, and then also we have representatives of Packet Digital. Terry Zimmerman is on the phone, and Matt Steele will walk us through a presentation. But Ryan, why don't you go ahead?
Members of the commission, honored to be here today to talk on behalf of Packet Digital, a company that we've had the fortune of bringing in front of this body a few times over the last 3 years. We're seeing a continued progression in both size, scale, and scope of what this company is doing. I realize there's a lot on the agenda today, so I'll try to hit a few of these topics really quickly before we introduce Terry to talk about where the company's at and what this project represents for our region. The first item I wanted to mention is, this is the first of its kind battery cell manufacturing facility really anywhere in the United States. Currently, the line of work that Packet Digital is in, they're developing battery technology systems for aerospace and drone technologies. Clients like Lockheed Martin, Air Force Research Lab, Navy, and a number of other global brands that you'd be familiar with. They are now going to onshore battery cell manufacturing, which 95% of all the battery cells for aerospace and drone activity is currently done in China. So they're going to be the first facility in the U.S. to be onshoring that activity. They'll be doing it here in Fargo. They've acquired or looking at acquiring space in the industrial park area. And I want to just mention too, when this company acquires buildings, they're taking kind of modest industrial space. They're tripling the value of it with the investments they're making in building out, bringing in equipment, adhering to the security and standards that their clients at the defense level require. This new building is going to be no exception. They've nearly tripled the value of the previous building they acquired, and they'll be looking at investing over $11 million in this new building, a building that's currently, with property valued at just over $4 million. When I think about what this means, kind of broader ripple effect, not only is this a great project that's going to bring a lot of capital investment into our market, good paying jobs, over the course of 5 years, they're planning to hire dozens of new employees. They're starting out at over $40 an hour, just minimum wage. That's before benefits. But this really establishes our region as kind of an advanced battery manufacturing destination. So as we're thinking about growing our presence in aerospace and growing our presence in autonomous and unmanned aircraft systems, electric vehicles, this is a huge step forward. This represents, to those potential industries and those potential companies that might make investments, there's a center of gravity here, and there is components and parts capabilities here in that sophisticated next-gen battery technology space. So I've probably said more than I need to. I think if Terry's on, we would allow her to make some comments about the project.
Terry, can you hear us?
Thanks, Jim. And yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're fine. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim and Ryan and members of the commission. Thank you for your time today. Matt's going to help me through some of these slides. We're very grateful for the support we've received from the city. On this first slide, you can see our corporate headquarters on 32nd Avenue South, and then our manufacturing facility we just opened on 7th Avenue. On the next slide, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary in Fargo, building power electronics. If you go to the next slide, Packet Digital builds power solutions, power modules, batteries, autonomous systems, whether that's aerial, in orbit, in space, underwater, or light ground vehicles. And that's our battery on a commercial drone. If you go to the next slide, it details out some of our customers. As Ryan mentioned, we have many military customers, Army, Navy, SOCOM, Space Force, NASA. We also have many commercial customers, Lockheed Martin, Bell Helicopter, Toyota. And I'll talk a little bit about our history and then why we're doing what we're doing in this expansion. If you go to the next slide, we cut our teeth really building computer chips, power algorithms, and we had achieved advanced power management and improved battery life in military radios. So the government turned to us, the U.S. Marine Corps, to extend endurance on a platform, and we turned about 90 minutes of endurance into 15 to 18 hours in this specific platform. And then on the next slide, the Pentagon turned to us and asked if we could turn minutes into days, and we're allowed to say on this platform, we achieved multi-day flight integrating our power systems, including our batteries, our power modules, our power distribution systems, and our maximum power point tracking solutions with our algorithms designed with our engineers in Fargo. On the next slide, the visibility of these programs brought us commercial success with companies like Lockheed Martin, that battery on the Lockheed Martin drone. The next slide, we're also building solutions for Bell Helicopter. They turned us because of our focus on safety. We build battery management systems that focus on the safety systems, and we track the entire fleet batteries and manage that entire fleet. On the next slide is the Anduril system. With their Ghost drone, they utilize AI and cell towers to manage fleets of drones. On the next slide, you can see this is actually a submersible drone. This is a submersible battery that we shipped. It's a drone that flies for 1 hour and then submerges underwater for 6 months. We've just shipped our second submersible as well for Anduril with their dive drone. If you go to the next slide, in 2020, the Air Force turned to us with the success we had in the unmanned space and aerials to see if we could build similar solutions, power distribution, max power point tracking, power systems for space. And we are completing our first prototype and completed testing, and we are just being awarded on funding, which we expect to close here by April or May. On the next slide, our superpower is really building high performance batteries. And as Ryan alluded to, there isn't anywhere in the United States that's built the high performance batteries that we're building. We build the highest combination of power and energy density for autonomous systems and aerial systems. And those batteries are extremely long, and we focus on safety, and it's made in Fargo in the United States. And here's what Lockheed Martin had to say on the next slide. They're architect said, we have been cycling Packet Digital's batteries for 6 months. It's now at 1,000 cycles. That's 10 times better than anything we've ever seen, and it only shows % degradation. You go to the next slide. And we patented that technology and our innovative algorithms. And we're excited to be able to bring extended endurance and novel sleep states to extend the shelf life of our batteries. On the next slide, last year, we just closed a significant contract with the Navy. The Navy is bringing more autonomous systems aboard the fleet, going ship to ship and ship to shore. They turned to Packet Digital to set the standard for battery safety aboard the fleet. We're building batteries, charging systems, containment systems, and storage systems, and setting the standard on how batteries would be shipped to the dock and transported aboard the Navy fleets. And the companies that we had the opportunity to work with and now building batteries for include, on the next slide, Aerodynamics, which is a unique trans-wing platform, L3 VTOL, and then the next company, Sheld AI, which is exactly utilizing AI to control their whole fleet. And the next slide is Skyways. And after that, the next slide is a vision of the development that we made on 7th Avenue North to handle the increased demand we had from commercial, military, and specifically the request we had from the Navy bring in more of the supply chain into Fargo. We were historically doing all the design in Fargo, building all of the systems, but we weren't designing our own circuit boards until we opened our 7th Avenue North location. If you go to the next slide, while we are building the highest combination of power and energy density batteries in the world, there is an opportunity and a problem that exists that Ryan alluded to. Well, 95% of those battery cells are still being made in China. The President has an executive order mandating that all electronic batteries be made in the United States, and 100% of US government agencies have a country of origin requirement. On the next slide, we saw this as an opportunity, and we are now proceeding to build a battery cell plant to accommodate our other capabilities here in Fargo, North Dakota. Slide, we have identified a location in North Fargo, just off of 12th Avenue. It's an existing building, and we anticipating another 4 to 7 million in improvements and an additional 14 million in equipment to produce battery cells. We've been working with the state of North Dakota, the EPA, as well as the city of Fargo in implementing the processes and the ISO standards for this new facility. You go to the next slide. We have been working on the layout for the plant. As I mentioned, we have been experiencing significant growth as markets for electrification and autonomy are merging. We're seeing more and more customers coming to us wanting systems and power systems. So we're building an initial layout that can be replicated, and we can double our capacity as we continue. On the next slide, speaking of our growth, we have doubled our team members in the past 18 months. We're conservatively predicting to continue that growth to over 100 team members, and we are providing very strong salaries and high-tech jobs in Fargo, North Dakota. If you go to the next slide, we have branded our batteries, Badland batteries, and we are building those on the next slide and powering the future here in North Dakota, in Fargo. So that concludes our presentation. Is there questions?
Any questions
For us?
from the commissioners? No questions from the commissioners. Anybody from the public who wishes to talk about this? Anybody from the public? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, and then I have a question for Jim.
Okay, Commissioner Preston.
So, Jim, can you put this in, by the way, this whole project, this company is so exciting to watch. It's been fun to see the multiple times and to see your presentation again. But can you put this into context of the past things that we've done? Have they all been property tax exemptions for buildings, and are those buildings still being occupied? Just give us a little big picture.
I can't remember, about probably a little over 5 years ago, they were located on one of the floors of the Radisson. They were, doing the engineering design, but making stuff elsewhere. They then acquired a building where they moved to on South University, just south of 32nd Avenue. That was that kind of that brown brick building. There they were doing, more of the battery manufacturing and some of the systems. They were outgrowing that space, and so they've kept that space on South University, where they received a 5-year property tax exemption. They recently opened another facility where they're manufacturing, these, not the batteries yet, but the other systems on 7th Avenue North and I-29. That was also a 5-year property tax exemption. And then this would be the third, where we'll be adding batteries. As Terry noted, they've been ramping up on the jobs, and I think they've probably exceeded everything. The spot on 7th Avenue just recently opened, and so, this one will bring in about 25 jobs, all over $35 to $40 an hour. It's scored very well on our scoring system, 166 points. You only need 120 in year 3. They mentioned they're buying this building for $7 million. I think the assessor has it valued a little less. It shows you how fast the building values are increasing, and putting another $7 million into it. So another 5-year exemption. It's important for most of the young companies as they're trying to staff up and buy equipment. That first 5 years is kind of that key time that they need the property tax exemptions.
That's your 2.5 minutes, Jim.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Sorry. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Kolpak? Aye. Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you, Terry. Have a good day. Item 39,
Thank you.
public application for WePay, doing business as Arvid Design and Manufacturer for a property tax exemption for a project to be located at 2222 7th Avenue North, which the application will use for a variety of mechanical engineering services. Jim Gilmore to explain as well.
This company, they're currently located on Main Avenue. They do mechanical engineering as well as build some systems. I believe they're in lease space now, and they would be acquiring this building. It's along 7th Avenue North. You can see our transit garage is located in the block immediately to the west. They're looking at creating an additional 9 jobs. The tax exemption would be for about 60% of the building that they occupied. So the rest of the building that they don't use, they would pay the full property taxes. This scored very well. The recommendation is approval. Guy Nelson from Anvil is here to talk a little bit about the company and their projected growth. Get a 5-year property tax exemption.
Thanks, Jim. As he said, I'm Guy Nelson. I'm the owner, president of Anvil Design and Manufacturing. We've been doing business for about 20 years. We started off as a small engineering consulting firm working for local companies, Amity Technology, MagTech, Precision Equipment, and then expanded in the tri-state area. We then began doing fabrication, manufacturing, more engineering, and our company has just continued to grow. The current building that we're in, we are busting out of the seams. I actually have 2 businesses in there. One is Anvil Design and Manufacturing. The other one is Skidlift LLC. Anvil does do a lot of the engineering and a lot of the fabrication for Skidlift. And by having this new building, it'll allow us more space to be able to do more of the fabrication, bring more of the product back in-house, bring it back locally instead of outsourcing some of those things, as well as do some more work for other local manufacturers which we've been doing already, but it would just allow us to do more bigger projects, more money to the city, to us, as well as create a lot more jobs. We're looking at, in 5 years, we should be looking at around 16 new employees and a total of $1 million in new payroll tax or payrolls. So.
Thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to talk about this tax exemption? Anyone present wanting to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Preston first, Pipcorn second. Any discussion? Mr. Strand?
What's lean manufacturing? Is that just a way of streamlining it, or what?
Streamlining. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Pipcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 40, public hearing, RALT second edition, approval recommended by Planning Commission on 1/2/24, zoning change from general office to limited commercial and MR3, first reading of rezoning ordinance, and the plat of the RALT second edition. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting this item, which has an ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office. Mr. Mayor, the applicant, Mr. Carlson, is appearing by phone today. Can we confirm he's available?
Carlson, are you on phone? You may have to punch a button now.
I don't have any to push, sir.
Okay, well, let's just continue. If he comes on, we'll acknowledge.
Commissioners, in addition to the staff report in your original packet, an updated staff report with a cover memo was emailed to you late Friday afternoon, and I believe is included as a lay-down item for you tonight. We'll refer to this later in the presentation. Our first item here, as the mayor has stated, is the row, I believe, row addition here, a minor subdivision and zone change here on 30th Avenue South. Here's 32nd Avenue South. Here's 25th Street. Vision Bank is here. Again, the shopping center here. Sanford down here, the Culvers there, and a zone change from general office to limited commercial and MR3, multi-dwelling residential. Property looks like this. Here's a couple photos from Friday here, an undeveloped area here. This is Vision Bank. As you see, there are some multi-dwelling residences around the rear and side. And then this is looking westerly. The subject property is here. This is Row Farms across the street here. And the zoning currently is general office, and the proposed zoning is MR3, multi-dwelling residential, and limited commercial. And how that's going to break down here is that, not too far, is that this lot here, this is Vision Bank here, this lot number 1 is going to be the limited commercial zone lot, and then the next 3 are going to be the MR3 zoned lots. Though the applicant proposes residential zoning on lots 2, 3, and 4 here. He had originally stated his intent was to build only one single-family residence on each lot. And now we're referring back to the updated staff report that you received here, Commissioners. Single-dwelling residences are allowed by right in the MR3 zone. We always think of it as a multi-dwelling zone, but you can build a single-family residence there. At the time, planning staff felt this was an insufficient density for this location, as is explained in detail in your staff report. And at the January 2nd Planning Commission, the staff recommended denial. Mr. Brad Garcia was our planner then, and he did the analysis work that's in your staff report. The Planning Commission did not agree with staff's findings for denial and instead recommended approval. Your staff report of February 15th, the one that was in your original packet, showed 2 recommendations: the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval and staff's recommendation for denial. The applicant, Mr. Carlson, subsequently provided a plan that proposed building a 2-unit residence on each of lots 2 and 3. So instead of there being 3 total units on 3 lots, there would be 5, 2 units here, 2 units here, and 1 unit on lot 4. Staff felt that this was a sufficient increase in density to change staff's recommendation from denial to approval. The updated staff report shows graphics for the new proposal and changes to the findings to reflect staff's support for this project. So staff is now recommending approval. Just to clarify, the Planning Commission recommended approval the first time, and their recommendation still is for approval. Staff has changed its recommendation to match the Planning Commission. There's also one comment letter attached to your packet from AARP sort of a policy statement letter. When we get to the recommended motion here, if your commission does move to approve, please use this motion. It has a little extra clarification language on the ordinance and also has this contingency, recommend approval contingent on final technical review of the plat, including the city engineer's signature. City surveyor has reviewed it, but our city engineer is still completing his final review. But otherwise, looks pretty good there. The applicant, Mr. Carlson, is with us, I believe, on the phone, and is Mr. Kuzas from Vision Bank here? Okay. And may wish to address the commission. That concludes staff's presentation. Again, the recommendation is on your screen for this.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this zoning? Anyone present wish to speak? Mr. Carlson, are you on? He's usually not a quiet guy, but we'll let it go. It's a staff recommendation anyway, so we go ahead. I close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Moved in a comment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kolpak, what's the comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially what happened was there was staff working with the developer mitigated by asking for increased density with additional townhomes, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then in fact, they came back with more than was requested by staff.
Yeah, they're, well, like I said, the original proposal was to just have one single-family dwelling unit on here. And there's that. I'm just going to do this one quick here. Hang on. There's that. This graphic is in your staff report. So this is basically how it's going to lay out here.
Okay, thank you.
Is that
yes?
sufficient? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kolpak, or Mr. Preston?
So in this motion, Donald, I don't see anything that specifies clearly that 2 lots will have twin homes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that assured through the final statement there, the final technical review?
Well, no, that's just for the plat, ma'am. So where Mr. Carlson has again, this is the one more I'm going to go to here.
That's what he submitted.
That was the plan that was in your staff report. You're not actually approving that plan, but Mr. Carlson has said that he's going to be bringing these forward as a 2-unit development.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak? Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 41, presentation of the 25th Street Corridor Study. Tom Knocklis to explain, and/or his consultants, and/or his team. Maybe Jeremy Gordon's been substituted.
Oh, that's right. I'll pinch it. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Good to see you tonight. The item in front of you is the completion of the 25th Street Corridor Study. I'll talk briefly and then hand it over to Scott Madoff from KLJ. So in partnership with MetroCog, we began this study early in 2022. The project extends to 3-mile corridor study. It goes from 32nd Avenue down to 64th Avenue. The first 2 miles from 32nd to 52nd were built in the early 90s. And the last mile, half of it was built in early 2000s, and we wrapped up the last part of it in 2010. So the main reason why we started this study is that we know the pavement only has a limited amount of life left. There's probably 8 to 10 years of the actual pavement. That's an asphalt roadway. You can mill and overlay. At some point, it needs to be replaced. So we're in the final decade of the pavement. So what this allows us to do is to really identify any improvements that could be made in terms of traffic operations, safety, pedestrian and bicyclists when we look at reconstructing the road. We're getting at a point in our life of our city where we can look at a lot of our existing streets and kind of give them a midterm report card. What's working well, what's working okay, and what could be improved upon. KLJ's been at this for 2 years. They're ready to wrap it up. They worked with the study review committee 6 to 8 times, and we had a number of public input meetings. So with that, I'll hand it over to Scott. He's the project manager from KLJ. Short slideshow, and I can answer any questions when he's done.
Thank you, Jeremy. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm Scott Middow with KLJ, and I'll just kind of give you the Cliff Notes version of the study we completed for 25th Street. So just kind of what we're going to go through today is the study location. As Jeremy mentioned, we had 2 rounds of public input, so we'll kind of talk about the initial round, the final round. look at what we had for future conditions, some of the existing conditions, the alternatives we looked at as far as the roadway typical section, and then wrap it up with kind of what we took back to the public and what we heard at the end. So as mentioned, the study goes from 32nd Avenue North down to 64th Avenue, or I'm sorry, 32nd Avenue South down to 64th Avenue South. It also includes the intersection of 27th Street and 52nd Avenue. And as we go through, we kind of segmented the study area into 3 miles or 3 1-mile segments as we walk through it. So starting with some of the existing conditions out there, it's 2 lanes in each direction for the most part. One of the things I did want to bring up though is the crash analysis we looked at. The important thing with this is 32nd Avenue, 52nd Avenue, 58th Avenue, 64th Avenue, and the intersection of 27th Street all are above the critical crash rate. With that, everything on 52nd Avenue, 58th, and 64th, over half the crashes at those intersections are related to young, inexperienced drivers. And if you look at the corridor down there, you have Davies, you have South High, or I'm sorry, Shanley, you have Discovery up on 40th, and so with those drivers, that makes sense. So our first round of public input was just to gauge what the public liked, what they see out there, what the issues they think are, what they'd like to see improved. And so we went out there and we kind of asked them to rate, what's the most important items to them in that hierarchy. And you kind of see how driver safety at the top and low cost improvements at the very bottom. We also had an interactive map where they could drop pins, say what the issues are, classify them into different items. And the things that kind of the themes that we saw was pedestrian safety. We heard it is not easy for pedestrians to cross that corridor. The big one was no center turn. So throughout that whole corridor, with the exception at the intersections, there is just 1 lane in each, or 2 lanes in each direction, not a center turn lane. And then another one we heard was speeding. And when you look at it, on 25th Street from 52nd Avenue all the way up to Rose Creek Drive, which is just south of 40th, that's almost a mile with very limited access points and no signals. So that's quite a big stretch through there that doesn't have any traffic calming. So taking some of that information we received from the public and we took traffic counts out there, we projected the traffic out to 2045. And we looked at it in 2 different ways. We looked at it under a scenario of no future access on I-29, and by that I mean nothing at 64th Avenue South or 76th. And then we looked at it with future access on I-29. North of 52nd, that area is essentially a built-out corridor. It's fully developed, so that had a very low growth rate. South of 52nd, if you don't have any future access on I-29, those volumes went up about 20%. If you add access on I-29, the volumes increase slightly. And so what we were finding is a lot of people south of 52nd are using 25th Street and 52nd to get to I-29 and go north and south. So we started looking at different roadway sections through there, and this kind of looks at all the different typical sections we looked at through the different segments, south of 52nd and north of 52nd. Just for sake of time, I'm not going to go through each one of these. I'm just going to more split it at 52nd Avenue. So starting to south of 52nd, we looked at some different roadway sections, and we didn't see a lot of benefit in changing anything. It's kind of a hybrid section down there, from 58th up to 52nd, you have 2 lanes south, 1 lane north. But what we did hear a lot during the public input is the roundabouts. People didn't feel that it was safe for their kids to use the roundabouts. And so what we looked at is how can we draw attention to those pedestrian crossings? So one alternative we identified was to put push-button actuated LED signs at all the roundabout locations at 58 and 64th to help draw attention to that. Another thing is to extend the existing shared use path on the west side of 25th Street. Currently it ends at 58th. Instead of extending that shared use path in the boulevard, what we could do is there's a frontage road on the west side just from 58th to about 64th. Have a little sidewalk connection to that. It's a very low volume road, sign it as a shared roadway, and that would allow more capacity for bicyclists and pedestrians in that area. So not a lot of improvements looked at south of 52nd. North 52nd, we looked at including the no build 4 additional typical sections. And really what we had in mind with this is the big thing we heard was no center left turn. And so that was kind of the focus we tried to implement in this while we looked at all the typical sections. So the first one was a 3-lane roadway. This would narrow up what's out there today. With that, we can preserve all the trees that are in the boulevards. Also with that is we can't really expand the pedestrian facilities on each side of the road. Currently, there's a path on the west side and a sidewalk on the east. Without removing those trees, we don't have a lot of room to expand that pedestrian infrastructure. If we move to the 5-lane section, which is the next alternative we reviewed, the existing boulevard trees actually start to overhang the new roadway. And so those would have to be removed. We could put new trees up just as a larger offset from the roadway. But that does give us the flexibility to add a shared use path on the east side of the road, so you'd have a 10-foot path on both sides. So in an effort to kind of preserve the footprint of the road that's there, we also looked at a 2+1 alternative. And so what that would be is 2 lanes in one direction and 1 lane in the other direction. And that allows us to still have traffic capacity, keep the existing footprint, but add that center turn that everyone heard about, or that we heard a lot of feedback with. So with that, this roadway has an unbelievably identical northbound and southbound traffic profile, which means during certain times of the day, there's the same amount of cars going northbound as there are southbound. It's not everyone's leaving South Fargo to go downtown and then everyone comes back at night. It is a very split directional traffic. So with that, between 52nd and 40th, it's a horse apiece on which one is more effective, if you put 2 lanes north and 1 lane south or vice versa. What we did find though from 40th Avenue to 32nd, it does perform slightly better with 2 lanes northbound and 1 lane southbound. Some of the intersection improvements we looked at with the study, the first one is at the intersection of Rose Creek Drive. So on the top right here, this would be Centennial Elementary. With the 3-lane section, we looked at including a roundabout at that intersection. And this was for traffic operations and just to look at how can we reduce some of the speeding. The roundabout does perform slightly better than the current traffic signal, but again, we did hear multiple people during the public input say that they didn't feel that their kids are comfortable crossing the street at a roundabout. And so food for thought, as this project progresses and then over the next decade. The other location we looked at was the intersection of 27th and 52nd. Again, in the southwest quadrant of 52nd and 25th, there's a lot of residential down there that are all trying to get to interstate is what we're finding. And so 27th is the path of least resistance for a lot of people. So in the morning, you see a huge line of cars stacked up trying to turn left at 52nd. And so we looked at different options on what we could do for intersection control there. The 2 that we carried forward was just the conventional traffic signal. So we, leave everything that's there today, pop a traffic signal in. We'd have to coordinate it with the signal at 52nd. The other thing we looked at was a reduced crossing U-turn. This is the same type of configuration that you'd see on 52nd west of 45th Street. This actually performs better than the traffic signal. There is more travel time for those people that are traveling northbound to westbound, but overall the intersection functions slightly better. So we kind of wrapped up all the alternatives and then looked at how we could score them based on different criteria. And the scoring matrix we pulled together looks at traffic operations. So just overall level of service of all the intersections, the travel time throughout the corridor, the environmental impacts. And really there's not a lot on this corridor with the exception of trees. If there's trees removed, it scores worse than if we can preserve the trees. Pedestrian mobility improvements. Again, this is identified as an active living street in the GO 2030 plan. And so trying to get that balance of pedestrian and motor vehicles through here. So if we're increasing pedestrian infrastructure, it's scored higher than if it stays the same. And then lastly, cost. I know I mentioned that 2+1 alternative could preserve the existing footprint of the road, but our costs do assume that every alternative that we showed you today would be a reconstruction. With that, 3 lanes is less concrete than the 5 lanes, so the smaller the road, the cheaper. You will notice that between 52nd and 40th, the costs are a little higher than 40th to 32nd, and that just takes into account the Rose Coulee crossing. That bridge would have to be replaced with the project. So as we wrapped all of this up, we took it to the public to kind of get their feedback. And again, this is kind of divided into the different mile segments. And what we found is everyone agreed with the proposed improvements for the most part, south 52nd. The intersection of 27th and 52nd, most people prefer a signal. And it's a little interesting, north 52nd. It's basically a split vote between do nothing and the 5-lane alternative as you, from 40th to 52nd and then from 32nd to 40th as well. So with that, again, kind of an abbreviated overview of the project, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the commissioners?
I have, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Preston?
Can you go back to the one right before that? There we go. Can you explain to me the environmental impacts and the pedestrian mobility improvements on the 5-lane? It looks to me like that's big. I mean, the impacts are very positive. It would be the opposite, it seems to me, especially on the pedestrian side, except that you're actually adding a shared use path on the east side. Is that the only reason?
Correct. That's really, so there is a shared use path on the west side out there today. And so with that 5-lane, we have to remove the trees because the drip line of the trees overhang the roadway, which allows us to increase the path, the sidewalk width on the east side of the road.
And wouldn't that be a negative impact on the environmental?
It is. So I guess on this one, the red arrows pointing down is a higher impact than the blue arrows pointing up. So maybe
Oh, that's supposed to be a negative.
yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
So here you can kind of see
Okay.
most existing tree removals, least tree
Okay,
removals.
all right.
So.
Then if I could do another follow-up. When I read this report, and I struggle with a minor arterial like this and the impact on pedestrian and bicycles. It's tough to retrofit something to make it more pedestrian friendly, I know. But I lived a block from this street, and back then even people were complaining bitterly about car speeding. And I'm assuming it's probably worse now with the increased traffic. And I don't see much in your report about the impact. And yes, here you've got it at least in pictorially, but the impact on pedestrians. And this whole street is residential. It's schools on one side, churches on another, retail, gas stations. It's just a real big mixture of a whole bunch of things. And pedestrian safety is not very existent on this street. Can you talk a little bit more about the analysis about pedestrians and bicycles, considering that Centennial is right down the street? There's a junior high right across.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all alternatives, I didn't cover in this presentation, but one of the crossings of 25th Street that's at a non-signalized intersection is at 37th Avenue. It's right across from Stonebridge Park. There's a shared use path system that crosses the road. Because of that T intersection, one of the things we looked at adding was a raised refuge island so pedestrians could cross one direction of travel, wait for the other one to clear, and then cross that one. We did visit with Centennial School. We also visited with Valley Bus, who does the busing. And one thing we looked at is we can have 40th Avenue perform slightly better if we add right turn lanes to that intersection. But with that, in reviewing the Safe Routes to School plan and discussion with Valley Bus, that intersection is one of the hardest intersections to cross. Even though it is signalized, it's not Centennial students as much as Discovery students that are having issues crossing that. So we looked at that as an option rather than alternative to carry forward, just because we don't want to try and increase that crossing distance by adding a turn lane. The Safe Routes to School plan does look at that as well, and has some other items that could be implemented with that. But really, we're trying to focus keeping pedestrians, increasing the mobility with paths if we can, and then trying to increase the safety of crossing so there is the signal there, but beyond that, I guess we don't have any other recommendations in this report.
I drive past it every morning, and I'd say that Discovery kids going back and forth have the biggest challenge. And if you increase the right lane, then it'll be even longer distance. And these are young kids that are going to Discovery Middle School type stuff. I think you have an interesting report and will be interesting challenges because, if you make it wider, you take all the trees out. And if you do it to be more traffic efficient, what does it do to the pedestrians? So I think it's a real challenge for the engineering team to come up what the neighborhoods will really like. Because not only do you have commercial, but you have residential, you have apartment buildings going down the corridor by Shanley. That's got a lot of apartment buildings. And it just seems as we increase traffic on that 25th, what's going to happen as we go south. If we can't offload on 64th or offload on 78 to take them on the interstate, that'll be a busy north-south corridor. So I think it is going to be a challenge for the commission to pick the right thing, because if you make it more traffic efficient, it becomes less safety and it knocks out the trees. So I remember when you first built it, I thought it'd last forever, but we're already talking about what to do with it as we go forward. So this will be a good one, Jeremy, for you to figure out best practice.
Yep, just my 2 cents, it's a 4-lane road with no center left. That's an awful design. So, on Main Avenue downtown, we selected the 2+1 with the center turn. That's more than likely what we'll end up doing here. And, this is 8 to 10 years away, so we don't have to decide today.
But you get in, if people go into church, they take a left turn. I mean, that gets busy when people are busy during that time, and you get, if you get behind them, you're going to be stuck for a while. And I think it does traffic slow, but
yep.
the left lane is really interesting not having it.
Yeah, you really want to have some friction to slow people down. I kind of like the idea with the roundabout at the school, but there's a love-hate relationship with roundabouts as well. But if you do take a driving lane away, it is going to intuitively slow things down a bit. Yeah. And with that center left, you really can make those turns a lot more safe.
Any other comments? It's a receive and file, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor,
Mr. Strand.
Thank you. Could you back up one slide from this one here, please? I'm not sure that's the one I saw. It was where basically you had the matrices of no change or change, and it was almost split. There you go.
Oh, this one, yes.
Okay. What I am wanting to understand is some change you're saying is inevitable with the pavement deterioration and conditions.
Yeah, we're going to have to reconstruct the pavement at a minimum. Yeah.
Regardless. And then the enhancements are where it gets debatable. Am I following?
Yeah, basically, do you want to, since we know a 4-lane road is an awful design, what do we want it to see in the future? Will it improve safety? Will it improve peds and bikes? It's an opportunity for us to repaint that corridor.
So here's what I'm thinking as you go forward is if it's this and this, at what point is it worth it to make those changes for the enhancements you get versus not? My general sense is every chance we can, we need to pull our belt in and have a tight budget. So I'll be looking for cost effectiveness and efficiencies and return on investments. And if it's 6 of one and half and a dozen of another, my mind might be, let's be cost effective. Just a thought. I don't know if I'm interpreting this correctly or not, but unless it's really essential and the people are willing to pay for it, I don't know why we would necessarily go down some of those decision paths. Last thing I'll ask Jeremy is, generationally, my guess is future generations from their parents will have a better understanding of roundabouts and won't be inheriting this bias from other generations that they're unfamiliar with them. My sense is that roundabouts historically do pretty well through time as people adjust to them.
No, that's exactly right. My mom and dad just turned 80 and they say, Jeremy, just make them bigger. They don't mind them. They just have to make them bigger.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Chief Dirksen, are you ready to give us the 23 Fire Department annual report? Do you want a break, Shelley, or are we okay to keep going? Okay. Chief, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be in front of you again here tonight. Hard to believe that 12 years ago I was just finished 12 years last November here, and so last year was by far, in my estimation of things here, one of the most difficult years that we had to work through. And my wife says that even my hair's gotten grayer and even less of it. So, but it's been my pleasure to serve as the fire chief over the last year, and I cannot say enough about the staff that we have. We have just some tremendous folks that are dedicated each and every day to do all the work that they do, put themselves out in harm's way and move along. And our hearts and minds and thoughts and prayers go out to our brothers and sisters in Burnsville this evening. They all did yesterday morning or Sunday morning when we heard about it. So I do want to acknowledge those folks, and we too will be working through and participating in the memorial service down there as it comes forward. So, but let's take a look at 2023. So we kind of stayed even this last year with the call responses. We had seen a steady increase, and we were predicting to get close to that 15,000 mark. We were happy to see that we dropped even a few from last year, but maintaining, that's a good thing for our community, that we can do that and not continue to grow our total responses. But you can see there's one area that causes me a little concern, and that's our downtown area. That number has really been jumping up and up and up for the last number of years, and we're getting close to the point where we're going to have to look at some additional staff and resources to help with our calls in the downtown area. We'll be coming forward with that as we move forward in plans, as we move into future budgets, and how we can alleviate some of that, making sure that we're responsive to the needs in the downtown and making sure that we can serve the citizens the best that we can. But you can see we're getting close to 4,000 calls in the downtown. And we're starting to track in new areas. I know we're building Station 8, and I'll talk to that in a little bit, but we're tracking what we call the Station 9 planning zone and the Station 10 planning zones. Those are starting to tick up numbers of calls. Station 9 would be the Deer Creek area, kind of an area to be a future. I think there's some exciting opportunities in that area in the future. It's kind of where Horace, West Fargo, and Fargo all come together. So I think there's some good time and an opportunity for some future discussions on how we can maybe all play together down in that area and serve each of our citizens in each of our communities. And then Station 10 is up in the industrial area. We're getting the larger buildings, the Amazon warehouse and things that are going on there. And so we're starting to see more and more calls for service up there. And then I threw another one on there that we had 37 mutual aid responses last year. That's more than we've seen in a number of years, and that means we're going out to our partners and our agencies in Moorhead and West Fargo and even down to Horace and up to Harwood and assisting them when needed, and we have those agreements in place. So as you can see, fire calls are 288 last year, and our fire problem continues to be smoking materials and cooking. When you look at our structure fires, we had 91 structure fires last year. 46 of those, half of them started in a cooking area. Others were in the bedroom, the garage. But again, it's cooking and smoking materials that are generally the cause when we have building fires. EMS, the good thing I can report on EMS when I talk to other fire departments, and I'm in the process through the accreditation process, reading reports from 43 different fire departments across the country and the world. They're looking at EMS responses in the neighborhoods of 85 and 90%, and we're under 60. So that is one good thing within our community, that our EMS responses we're not following the national trends in that way. We had 786 lift assists. You may wonder what a lift assist is. Somebody falls in their home or their apartment somewhere and can't get up and needs a little help. They don't really have a medical emergency, but you can see we go on just about 2 of those a day, helping citizens. And then we find a lot of other needs as well when we go there, and we're working through processes to help people fix those. We're talking with an agency right now that can help us refer those people to the right places and maybe get some assistance so that it doesn't end up being a 911 call. And then we have just over 1,700 responses a year that are alarms going off in the building. They're not false alarms. They're alarms that went off for some reason. The system was activated for a reason, whether it's dust or something. It acted the way it should when it noticed something wrong and notified the building that there was something wrong, and we got called and went to go figure those things out. So our total response time, that's one thing that we really look at, and try to set our goals to get places, because our EMS goal is to be on scene from the time someone picks up the phone and dials 911 to when a fire truck shows up at the front doors in 6 minutes, because we know that in cardiac arrests and other trauma events that brain death begins in 4 to 6 minutes when the heart stops beating. So our goal is to be there in 6 minutes. We weren't very successful in that, getting close to that 6 minutes this last year. We were at 8 minutes and 45 seconds. And, Ben Dow and his crew does a great job. Last winter was tough. And getting a 40,000-pound fire truck down the street in the weather conditions that we had, it was difficult. But we do the best that we can. We found alternative methods to run pickups and things like that and do those things. But it's still the weather conditions that we observe here in Fargo does cause us issues. But fires, we did pretty good there getting our first unit on scene. Our goal is 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and that's based off a national standard through the National Fire Protection Agency, and their standard 1710, which is deployment for career fire departments. The goal should be 6 minutes and 20 seconds. We are at 7 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll continue to work on that and do the best that we can to improve that. We're hoping with the addition of Fire Station 8, we'll see some of those times go down, because we'll decrease those response times in South Fargo. And then you may wonder what an ERF is, and that's what we in the fire service call the effective response force. And our goal is to have that effective response force. So in Fargo, for most home fires, our goal is to have 4 fire engines, 1 ladder truck, and 1 battalion chief on scene in 10 minutes and 20 seconds. And we did that in 11 minutes and 48 seconds. And we'll continue again to look at ways that we can improve that and move that forward and get closer to that 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Oops. So our dollar loss, this was a good thing of last year. We had less severe fires than what we've had in the last 3 years. COVID, we saw that big spike. We're back at that normal where we've kind of been the mid-20 teens. So we're back in that less than $2 million in fire loss. And for a community our size, that's a really good number. Communities our size across the country, you're probably looking, on the average of about a $5 to $6 million fire loss. So that was a good year in that way for our community. Even though we had more fires, we had 288 fires. We didn't have as much damage as what we've had in previous years. One thing we wanted to make sure we talked about is over the last 5 years, we've had 8 civilians lose their lives in fire. Last year we had 2. The previous year we had 4. We'd like to see that 0. Again, back in the mid-20 teens, we were at a lot of years zero fire fatalities. Last year we had a double fatality fire. You can see we've had a few civilian injuries as well. Last year, 2022 was the high year, but last year was down to 8. And then as the result of our firefighters operating at a fire, we had 5 firefighters that received some type of an injury. Most of them not serious. Most of them are sprains and strains when we look at it and that. So we're very fortunate in that for the number of times that we're going out and responding and being there. To have only 5 firefighter injuries. We're pretty fortunate in that respect. We have our specialty teams, and just want to highlight some of the things that they do. On the top left-hand corner, you can see a video from our drone team. It was probably the most dramatic video we've had in quite a while, utilizing our drone team of just what they were flying the day that that the Lashkowitz high-rise came down, and just to see what it shows us and how we can utilize that in public safety as we move forward. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity. I was invited to attend a 2-day webinar from the National Institute of Science and Technology on uncrewed aircraft systems and AI in the use of the fire service and technology, and just to see where that has the potential to go in the years to come. It'll be a fun thing to watch and see how the public safety sector responds to that. On the bottom, you see our folks some of our new people getting some training on hazardous materials. All of our folks are trained every year to hazardous materials operations level. A number of our people go to classes either down in Alliston, Alabama, or College Station, Texas. They call it TEACS. and go through classes down there and become hazmat technicians. And then on the right, you can see part of our technical rescue team doing some of the training that they do on an annual basis, making sure that they have an understanding of how to trench and if there's a collapse of a trench due to construction or whatever that might be. They also are very well trained in if we had a structural collapse, if a building would collapse or anything like that. They do this on a monthly basis and really gear each quarter to one of the specialties that they need to do and learn there. So our folks are dedicated into that, and this is above and beyond their firefighting duties. Not everybody is a hazmat technician and not everybody is a technical rescue expert, but we spread them out through all of our shifts. This is one area where I'll be talking with each and every one of you as we get ready for the next legislative session. Most of our funding for the hazmat teams and the technical rescue teams comes through a state grant, and we are allotted for a 3-year period now. Each year, I think this is the last year, allotted $136,000, and that's to replace any equipment that we need to replace and send our folks to training. And that's getting to where it's not enough, and we've had to cut back or push back on some things. When you talk, some of our hazmat monitors are $80,000, $90,000. That eats up $136,000 each year, and we're part of the regional response for the state of North Dakota for the southeast quadrant of the state. So as we move forward with that and we look at legislation, I'll be talking with each of you about how we can might find a way that we could ask for some additional funding to help us make sure that we can meet the needs of our community and the rest of the state. So some of our major accomplishments that we had over this last year, we retained again our accredited agency status through the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, which I currently serve as the chair. And so that's good for us to do that. We're preparing this year with that in 2024 to be ready for a site visit that will happen in 2025. Some of you may remember that when we had a team come in during COVID in 2020, came and took a look at us, took a look at our processes, our training, our documentation, and they'll be coming sometime after March 31st of 2025. Exciting for us was the new strategic plan, which you all approved at the end of December, and some of you participated in. We thank you for that. We're looking forward. We just had a meeting last week to start pushing that forward and who's going to be responsible for the different areas and making sure that we move that forward. We had one of our battalion chiefs retire at one of the 7 retirements that we had last year, so we promoted one battalion chief last year. Throughout the year of those retirements, we also had some captains retire, so we promoted 4 captains. We have held 3 joint fire academies with the West Fargo Fire Department, so that resulted in 16 new hires. And you look at that and you say, Chief, there's only 7 retirements and you hired 16 people. Well, we've had people have taken the opportunity. We have a job market that's out there, and people may want to look for different jobs, so they've left the fire service. And about half of them that have left us have left the fire service altogether and went to work in different jobs. We had the other half probably left and went to other fire departments. We lost a few of our folks last year to Moorhead. Went over there because they had promotional opportunities. We're kind of stagnant in that rank for right now. That'll probably be changing over the next couple of years, but those were opportunities that people chose to take. And but we are becoming a much younger department that we have, and we have good people. They're well trained, and we'll continue to do that and move forward. One of the highlights of last year, though, was the hosting of the Missouri Valley Fire Chiefs Annual Conference. The Missouri Valley Division of Fire Chiefs consists of North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Colorado, and Wyoming. And we haven't hosted that conference here since 1977, so that was a fun event to have in town. We had about 140 people from around the region and some vendors in town, and everybody enjoyed their time in Fargo. They said they were really happy to come in June. They didn't want the conference in January or February. And then the other exciting thing happened right in conjunction with the Missouri Valley Chiefs. We had the groundbreaking of Fire Station 8, and the work is coming along with that as well, and I've got a couple comments on that in the next slide. But and then one of the other things that we did this last year that I'm really glad that we did, and we put part of our annual medical physicals that we've been doing for years and years. This year, or last year, we required all of our employees to go through an annual mental health check-in. And that's with a licensed therapist or psychologist, somebody, a counselor that's been trained in trauma with first responders. And we have had just a great response from our folks on going there. A lot of them like, I don't want to go. I said, I don't care if you go there and talk about the Twins and the Vikings, how much that upset you, or whatever it might be. But just go there and talk about it. And the response that we've gotten back from that is just really, really great. And again, I can't say enough about our folks. I forgot to add a slide in here. Our folks on their days off, when they're not here, they're out raising money for MDA. They're taking kids, they're going and participating in the MDA camp. They're working on, we do a firefighter day ringing the bell for the Salvation Army. The mayor called me up one day and said, hey, we know of a family that needs some assistance for Christmas. And our firefighters stepped up, wrote a check, and brought gifts to that family. That's who you have for employees, and we're proud of them. They do a great job for you, not only while they're working, but being ambassadors within the community as well. So with Station 8, our building is approximately 55% complete. Every week I go there for our construction meetings. It's amazing just to see the work that's being completed there. Interior wall construction is about 85% complete. The plumbing rough-in is about 90%. The electrical rough-in's 50% complete. So far, to date, we've had about $40,000 in change orders, or less than 1% over the bid price, which is really good. And most of those dollars are a result of things that either we had to put more street in than what we thought because another project didn't happen, or we had to put something in the water retention that wasn't anticipated. We're anticipating that the completion date will be the first week of August of 2024. And the one thing that is holding us up right now is we're experiencing some supply chain issues with the electrical switch box. It was supposed to be here last week. Now they tell us it's going to be here in a month. The electrical contractor is a little bit concerned about that. They had the same issue over at West Fargo as well, with that same type of switch box that they needed. So we thought we had it taken care of. We were hopeful, but we're seeing delays there. But we're still hopeful for that August end of construction. And here's what we hope to have what it's going to look like. Some of those awnings are going to start to go up in the next couple of weeks, so that'll all start taking place. The garage doors will probably be the last things to go in, but most of the doors and windows are already in. And here's just a few pictures of what the construction looks like. So the top left is the apparatus floor where the trucks will park. That's been fully paved. It's all covered so we don't damage any of the concrete in there. You can see the construction of pouring the trench drains, and that'll sit underneath the trucks. In the upper right corner there is the living quarters. That looks way different than that picture right now. The walls, all the steel studs are up. Some of the sheetrock is already hung in there. So we're excited for that to get done. And then this is just us standing on 33rd Street looking at the building. A lot of things have been happening. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Chief, it doesn't look like you have a fire pole anymore. All the guys on first floor?
Everything's on the first floor. We find that's the safest way to be.
I thought they were faster if they jumped out that pole and ran down to the fire truck.
Well, it's if you're on a second floor, and it's more cost effective, Mayor, if we build a single story building versus a 2-story.
I think you've done an excellent job, just so the commission knows, on keeping the pricing down. I think you worked really, really hard to get it in that budget, and if you only have $40,000 of change orders, that's fantastic, and you should be congratulated for that good work. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chair.
Kolpak.
So I encourage you to take a look at the report. It was a real collaboration between Communication and Government Affairs and the Fire Department. It includes the 6 planning goals that come out of that strategic planning process. And I was going to also mention the work of Local 642 with the community service events. That's also featured in that report. So I encourage you to take a look at it.
Mr. Strand.
I'm just curious, what keeps you up at night? What do you lose sleep over? If work-related.
Work-related. It's just becoming an increasingly, the dangers are changing. I'll say that. You know, I started in the fire service in 1989. And I would have never thought, I mean, I was still wearing 3/4 boots and a long coat and steel air packs, and the technology that's changed. This last year, we had over 100 responses where we were either assisting PD with some type of an assault, whether it's a gun or a knife or some other type of weapon. Those are the things that worry me, and it's the changing things that our folks come across each and every day. I would have never dreamt that a firefighter would be wearing ballistic gear, but now we carry it on our trucks. Those are the things that worry me. You know, that we all know that there's dangers in the job, and everybody accepts that. But it's those unknowns that are out there that where you're there, and then things change in a hurry. And you know, I just talked with a friend of mine that's the fire chief in Loudoun County, Virginia, over the weekend. He lost a firefighter. They were investigating a gas smell in a house, and something ignited the gas in the house, and I think there was 9 firefighters in the house, and one of them was killed. And so just that unknowing the things that are out there, and you know, I worry every night about what's going to happen. You know, hopefully my phone doesn't ring in the middle of the night. I'm really happy when I wake up in the morning and I got to sleep all night.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that question. This is a receive and file. We have no action that we have to do in it. Thank you, Chief, for your report. Well, Airport Authority, you guys have been pretty patient tonight. I congratulate you on that. We always pick a night that we don't have much going on when we ask you to come before us. So thank you for making it. Recommendation to adopt the resolution approving airport facilities revenue bond and pledging deficit tax levy airport facilities revenue bond series 2023. Rick Berg to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to introduce other 2 commission members, Airport Authority members, Rick Ingen and John Cosgriff, our Executive Director, Sean. They're here for any questions. I'm just going to, and then of course, also the person that you send to the Airport Authority Commission meetings, John Strand, always asking thoughtful questions. So
thank you.
So anyway, basically what I want to do is really quickly run through really what's going on, just an overview of the terminal, the ramp, the timetable, and the finances. And, you know, thank you to Mike and Susan. We've spent a lot of time, I guess, also for Rick and John. They've kind of been part of an ad hoc finance committee to kind of put this through. So we can go to the next page or the next slide. Oh, do I do it? Well, I'll mess it up.
Katie will get to you.
So what you're looking at is the Bank of North Dakota has approved a $40 million. Complicated. All right. So this is just a shot of the terminal expansion. You can see on the left side the additional gates that will be added. This is just another view of the same terminal expansion. This is really the cost of the projects completed. So if you look at the blue, that's the cost of the terminal expansion. And then the orange, that's the cost of the parking ramp. And then at the top, the 22, that kind of gray, that's work we need to do on the runway or the apron area. And this is where the money is coming from. And this is kind of one of our biggest challenges. Again, this project's $197 million, so it's a huge project. I can just kind of quickly go around here. The dark blue, the 29 million, let me get caught up here. That's I would call that dependable money. It's part of ongoing revenue sources that are given to the airports. The 10 million is what we just received from Senator Hoeven and Senator Kramer. The orange is competitive money. So we're going to have to compete for that money as we go forward. The gray would be dollars from the North Dakota Airport Authority. And then the yellow, that is a combination of loans and other debt we may need on this project. So it includes the 40 million that I'll show you. And then the light blue, the 45 million, that's really the cash the airport has. And I know over the past years there's been a lot of consternation about the amount of cash that the airport has, But part of the reason that's been saved up is for this project. Because the challenge here is the terminal itself doesn't generate any revenue. And so that's why we need grants and we need these things in order to make this whole system work. Again, this just shows the terminal expansion, the 126 million. You can see the terminal and you can see the apron in the light blue. This would be the apron that needs to be replaced kind of out in front of the terminal, or I would say on the ramp side where the airplanes are. Now this next, it really gets into the ramp. And so you can see the ramp is 4 levels and it'll be in front of the terminal. And the cost of that is going to be $47.7 million. One of the key things you can see is there's going to be a skyway connecting the ramp with the terminal right in the center. And I think that'll be just a real addition to that so people can park, not being outside in the weather, go right to the second floor. If they don't need to check their bags, they can go through security and go right to their gate. And this is the one look of the ramp from one side and the ramp on the other side. This is the schedule. So the architect is Terry Stroh, T.L. Stroh, and you can see on the ramp we've approved this schedule. And so, I mean, the bottom line is we expect to be starting construction in June of the spring. Part of it is trying to figure out how you can build a ramp with the least impact over the winter. And then the completion is estimated 12 to 14 months. This is the finance of the ramp. So if we use the $40 million loan from the Bank of North Dakota and we put in 7.7 cash, that covers the cost of the ramp. And so if you, the debt is a 30-year loan at 2% interest, which is really wonderful for this project. The annual payments are $1.7 million a year. And what I'd like to point out is the first 5 years we're averaging about $1 million a year in debt reduction. So that's not necessarily cash flow, but we're actually paying off that debt pretty rapidly. And then if you go down through the rest of it, these are numbers that we've spent a lot of time as an airport authority figuring out what the cash flow is going to be on the ramp. We're anticipating an increase to $9.6 million in parking fees. Currently, we have about 7.3, so this should increase revenue by 2.2. And then you can just follow that down. And so our net cash flow, we're estimating at a little over $200,000. And we're assuming, I believe, 65% occupancy in this scenario. So it's been, I believe it's a fairly conservative scenario for this parking ramp. And this is just more detail on the debt. And then this is what we're asking the City Commission to do. In order for us to access this $40 million, we need this recommended motion that says if we default in this loan to the Bank of North Dakota, that the city would step in. So with that, I would see if there's any questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Mr. Strad,
I make the recommended motion.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion? You got to be a
Mr.
little
Chair,
bit tough
this
on
is Eric
Berger,
Johnson.
John. You got to make this easy for him.
Oh, yeah, you can. Absolutely.
Who's online?
Mr. Mayor, this is Eric Johnson. I was just going to ask if the recommended motion include the fee and reimbursement agreement and then approving the project just as Mr. Berg just presented.
We just had, Eric, just for your knowledge, is the recommended motion was put on it. And it says in the event of a debt deficit, to pay the debt service on the bond, also to approve the fee and reimbursement agreement and the project as presented. Is that what you want covered?
Yep, that's what I want. Thank you.
Okay, good. Mr. Preston.
You had made a statement that the terminal doesn't generate any revenue. The additional gates, aren't there gate fees?
Well, let me restate that. It doesn't generate substantial revenue. I mean, if we're spending $127 million, we receive revenue from the vendors that are there. They're going to pay rent. We also receive payments from the airlines when they have people getting on and off the airlines. The challenge there is if we want to attract more airlines, we have to be very careful because they look at those fees very closely, and so we can't charge a lot in those fees. So if I go, again, if you go back to my presentation, the 26 million, that's revenue that kind of comes from those fees on the terminal. But by and large, there's not much revenue from the terminal.
It's mainly parking.
Correct. I mean, that's, the main thing is this parking ramp where people are gonna, obviously, and this is an important thing for not only Fargo, but for the airport, because we believe with a parking ramp, we're gonna get more people come to Fargo rather than Sioux Falls. More people will come to Fargo versus driving down to Minneapolis. And also with the terminal expansion, we're gonna have more direct flights. And all of this, I believe, is gonna help our economy. It's gonna help our businesses grow. It's gonna connect things. And so just really excited that we're in a position where we can do this. Now, to the money side, we're not out of the clear. A lot of this, really, we're gonna need more support from the feds. We're also gonna need support from the city. And so I think when we go into the next legislative session, we're gonna ask to, for your help in asking for those things that are obviously gonna impact our city.
Just so the commission know, we will be asking feds for more money, John, and we'll also be asking the state for some money from an airport fund as well. Airport Authority's done hard work on this. I know you've been working, John, on this for almost a year, trying to get everything lined up, and Sean and the team, and you've had multiple accountants in there and different people helping you out, but you're finally to the point where we're going to do it, right?
So what keeps me up at night is the Airport Authority, yeah. But I think we've overcome this first hurdle, so excited about that.
And I think you showed that financially you can do it, and I think to the consumers in the community, they will be very pleased with the final result. I think the additional gates will really help traffic go through the airport, and people will very much enjoy the enhanced services that you're going to offer. So I'm glad you did the pitch at the end. But any other comments or questions? John, you want to speak?
I'll just say, every other week this airport authority meets, and it's kind of karma now. You get to sit through 2 hours for this meeting, but you really work hard. We have some citizen volunteers that don't get paid.
What?
Well, we could arbitrarily double your wages just like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's how much you get paid. But I want to acknowledge the effort and the tireless work and the contribution of your board and your members and your staff and your people for this vision that will have such a profound impact on our community in the near future. To have this airport doubling in size and to catapult Fargo up like that, like you're doing a $200 million project with volunteers. So thank you all sincerely. Sean, thank you for your leadership and your vision. And John and Rick and Paula and
Jim Capitan.
And Jim Capitan, these folks just really warrant our appreciation and are delivering in ways that generations ahead will look back and know that we had great leadership. Now,
I didn't quite hear you. Could you repeat that?
We had great leadership right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
John would like to put his handprint on the new runway.
Absolutely, he can, yeah.
So, roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you for your patience. 44, application for abatement or refund of taxes, 4555 for a property located at 1710 First Avenue South. Request a reduction of value on 2023 from $193,500 to $96,600. Mike Sapolsky to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. The property before you, the owner filed an abatement based on the fact that the house was condemned and was scheduled for demolition. He has since taken out permits to repair the property and has called us to review the value. Based on our appraiser's review and the thorough and extensive documentation of the inspections department, we agree that the property condition was bad enough to warrant a value reduction. So we are recommending the approval of this abatement as proposed.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 45, application for abatement refund of taxes 4556 for property located at 3723 21st Street South. A reduction of taxes from 371,400 to 331,400. Mike Spillhouse could explain as well.
Okay, the owner of this property filed an abatement based on her opinion that the value was high and that there was an increase in 1 year that was quite large. An appraiser did review the property in November and made some minor adjustments to the information that we had, but there was good market support for the value at that time. The large increase is due to a situation that I've mentioned a number of times here, where we have a certain property type or a certain area where we don't have a lot of sales to justify basically a value increase until suddenly we do have a whole bunch of them, and we have to make up the difference by doing large increases. In this case, the property stayed at the same value for 6 years before having an increase in value. We are currently striving to avoid those large increases by implementing smaller increases on an annual basis. The appellant did send several properties that she believed to be directly comparable with the subject. However, all but one were average grade houses, whereas the subject, in our opinion, is a good grade house. We feel that the grade determination on the property based off of the appraiser's work and looking through the review is well supported, and that the value is well supported and equalized with the comparable properties. The sales presented below show the subject property value is at the median sales price of $293 per square foot, and the comparable assessed properties show that the subject property is just slightly higher than the median value of $288 per square foot. So in this case, we recommend that the abatement be denied and the 2023 certified value be retained.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Pipcorn,
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. 46, application for property tax exemption for improvements made to buildings. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Liaison Commissioner assignment updates. Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. You all probably have a strong sense that there's been a profound amount of advocacy in our community for a ceasefire in the Israeli-Hamas situation. And it's been a ripe topic at our Human Rights Commission meetings. They've been working this and listening and hearing from folks. So you all know they had a meeting on Thursday at noon, and our deadlines for agendas are Thursdays at noon. So the commission, Human Rights Commission, met on Friday and unanimously passed a version of a resolution calling for a ceasefire and a release of the hostages. That has not come to our commission yet because we have not had a chance to get it on our agenda properly yet. I would expect and anticipate that this being an advisory board or commission recommending actions to the commission, I wouldn't be surprised it'll come to us. So you all know probably in 2 weeks we'll be having a vote from the Human Rights Commission on their recommendations for a ceasefire in that situation over in Israel and Palestine.
Mr. Kolpak.
No updates.
I have nothing. Mr. Preston.
Just, I spent an hour with the I'm trying to remember the name, Economic Strategies, the subconsultants with the growth plan this afternoon. Lots of information in that report. I mentioned it at our last meeting. Hopefully it will be a foundation for some conversations in the new Finance Committee. It was very informative.
Good. Commissioner Pipcorn. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.